Rob Duvall, and welcome to another episode of Unfiltered. I have two great guests with me here today, so thanks very much, Robin and Patrick, for coming. This is wonderful. First of all, Robin, I'm just going to read a little bit of your bio so people know who you are. So Robin is a marketing communications consultant here in Milton. She has her own business in Milton called Robin Reed Griffin Marketing and Events. So thanks very much for being here. We're going to kind of pick your brain tonight on the whole social media aspect of our talk. And Dr. Patrick Lala earned his MD at the University of Toronto and trained in pediatrics at Dalhousie University. He is currently a lecturer of U of T in the Department of Pharmacology and Toxicology, and is the acting director of the Applied Clinical Pharmacological Master's Program. Thank you so much for being here. One of the big discussions we're going to have is about vaccinations. This is always a very touchy subject. It shouldn't be, in my opinion. This is something that we should definitely be glad of in this country, that we have the capability of getting our vaccinations. But it's amazing to me really how this has evolved, where people don't believe in the science, they're not listening to what's out there, and now we have other diseases coming back that we haven't seen in a very long time. I think that's what worries me the most. Now, I'm getting older, so I'm 50 now, so I'm starting to remember a lot of these things when I had my inoculations as a young boy, and everybody else had to line up and get all these inoculations. And I've noticed that over time, being a parent myself, because we have 3 kids, where that has kind of dripped down. It's not as much of a deal because we don't hear about these things anymore. So, I guess that's my first question. Are we getting dumber with social media? That's really the question. I mean, we don't seem to be reading the proper journals. We don't seem to be looking at investigative reporting properly. It's just a wash. What is your view on this, Robin?
Well, it's very interesting. Just today, in one of the Facebook groups that I'm in, one of the moms was asking about the HPV vaccine. And my first thought was, why are you asking people on Facebook?
Right.
So yeah, that's one thing, to get opinions, but when it comes to something so serious in your child's health, my opinion is it's one thing to reach out to see what your peers are up to, but don't make that your deciding factor. You need to do the actual research with accredited places. But
I said that the other day, and an opinion's fine, but as soon as facts are involved, you can't have an opinion anymore.
Yeah.
It's not an opinion, it's a fact. And that's the problem, is everybody uses their opinion as kind of the gospel on what this is, and they're not listening. And I guess the hard part is people are now getting very vociferous on Facebook, because what ends up happening is you'll have someone who's opposed, and then someone will immediately, even if they're right, they'll just jump on them and start name calling, which makes it really difficult, because what happens is your ears shut off. You don't listen anymore. You're trying to get your point across, and you're probably doing a poor job at it, and it gets out of hand. So welcome to social media. It's just another form of a one-sided conversation, whereas in my day there was no social media at all, and we would have a discussion around a kitchen table, or we would have a discussion with our doctor. Go figure. So, what are you finding, Dr. Lala? Like, what are the issues that you're seeing, and what are your concerns that you see, or a trend that you see happening in the societal area?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. So with regard to vaccinations and immunizations, the fact of it is that, it's been one of the most successful interventions that medicine has ever come up with. The sheer number of lives around the world that have been saved by vaccines is literally uncountable, but hundreds of millions of people would otherwise not have been around had it not been for these preventable diseases.
Right.
So, the fact that there's been this resurgence of people who don't believe the science, I think reflects a few things. One is the idea that vaccines are sort of a victim of their own success, in that, as you said, we don't see many of the diseases that they're meant to prevent anymore. When was the last time you saw a case of polio? I mean, it's unheard of in the Western world these days. But the truth of it is, people who are of a certain age will remember that they had friends, family members who were in iron lungs because they were paralyzed from poliovirus. And so, the fact that we don't see this anymore, I think, has led to a sense of, it doesn't matter as much to if we have the vaccinations or not.
Right.
Whereas in reality, a certain percentage of the population has to be vaccinated in order to prevent these diseases from making a resurgence, like we're seeing with measles in the States and elsewhere around the world.
Well, the number one thing that I see on social media is that their argument is no one's died from it yet.
Right.
So what does it matter? No one's died.
Which itself is incorrect.
Which in itself is incorrect.
Yeah.
Completely incorrect. Because I pulled up a ton of stuff even from the CDC, and there is a lot of people who keep dying from diseases that we eradicated a very long time ago.
Yeah.
So their whole thing is, well, no one's died from it yet. Are we waiting for that? Is that actually our bar? Where we're actually waiting people to die from an epidemic? To me, that's not good medicine. That's not preventative medicine.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole purpose of being vaccinated is not only do you save yourself, but you also save the others around you. I mean, there are people truly with some type of immune deficiency. When SARS had happened, we heard about all the people that already had pre-existing respiratory problems. They were the first to go. And we don't want it to become that. Like, you're supposed to protect the others around you that actually do have an adverse reaction to getting the vaccine. That's exactly what it's for. So how do you deal with misinformation in your business? Because I'm sure that the message that gets out, that's how you get ahead of it in social media. You have to get that message out, and it has to be correct. But what do you do in the case of Facebook, where their analytics determine what users read? That to me is more frightening, because I'm in that business, and I'll tell you what I think in a minute, but I want you to speak on it. So,
Well, there's a lot. I mean, there's so much to go into with that. But even, I don't know if you caught it, but yesterday, Mark Zuckerberg, pardon me, did a big talk, and they are taking things more seriously because they've been under the microscope a lot. So they're doing their part to change things and to take away the economic incentives for these media outlets that push these false news and messages and so on. So they can't monitor everything, but they're giving the tools to users to be able to flag things that may be false news and whatever. And so one thing that I have learned too is when I'm going through things and see articles that are being pushed through and so on, is to look at the source. Is it an accredited source, or is it fake news? So that's, I think, the most important thing that we as users can do is check the source and don't just go by the headline, because headlines can be rather sensational.
well, and that's how Brexit was won or lost, whichever way you look at it. Cambridge Analytics, and we're going to be discussing this in my business because I'm in IT security and analytics and things like that. We're going to be discussing this for generations because it was brilliant and frightening all at the same time of how they made this happen. So if I click on a certain thing or I like a certain thing, it indicates a feeling, and it would learn. So if I decided to click on cats today, all of a sudden I start getting more news on cats. And if it sees me bending a certain way where I'm subject to not looking things up in proper research, it starts to give you more of that. So it feeds into this frenzy of, I'm going to give you more misinformation, and that one person only sees that misinformation at all times, never looks up anything else, and it knows that analytic and just markets to you, it's a marketing tool, markets to you that wrong data. And I can't believe what a few things that had come up. I wrote some of them down on the Facebook page. One of them was the Army is 100% vaccinated all the time with the boosters, yet they all acknowledge that the outbreak that kept them at the sea for months was caused exactly by the MMR vaccine. That's crazy. So I decided to find that article, which I found.
Right. Yeah.
U.S. Navy acknowledges MMR vaccine caused viral mumps outbreak. But when you read it, this is clickbait.
Right.
All they do is it's like, pig gives birth to humans, and then you find out, no, they didn't. It's a human that helped birth the pig.
Right.
And when you start reading into the article, they're not saying this at all. They're saying that there was an outbreak of someone who wasn't vaccinated on the ship, they were vaccinated, so they had to quarantine the ship anyway because there's an incubation period. I think it's ridiculous. Apparently you can come into a room like 12 hours later and still catch it. Like, this is a nasty bug that will hang around and just sit and wait. Like, they could be totally gone out for dinner and lunch and they're infecting everybody else, and they don't know it until they start getting sick. So this is something that we really have to be careful of. Clickbait is terrible stuff, and that's how they get paid, though. See, what the public really doesn't understand is they're now paid based on the amount of clicks instead of paid for journalism or a good article. This isn't that.
I think the public misunderstands that we're not the consumers of the product. We're the product. You know, we're being sold to the companies that pay for the advertisements and the clicks and all of that stuff.
Right.
So, you know, the tables have turned a little bit in terms of which direction the information flows in and what the sources, as you said, of information are appropriate and reliable.
Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah, and some of them as well. Another one, the myth that vaccine rates are dropping, also a myth. Not. They're not dropping. Like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
They don't protect you from getting measles, as most cases reported are from the vaccinated population. Again, incorrect.
Right.
Like, there's article after article after article that I've seen just on this little quote alone, and simply doesn't exist. The one person that you might find out of the 50,000 hits that you get that say, no, that isn't correct, I think people hold on to that and they go, there it is. There's that one person who said this. Well, you can't go by that either. I mean, I'd much rather talk to a doctor about it. It's like, you know, find out the facts first. So is this something that you've seen an upswing in, doctor? Like, you know, discussions maybe at university, like to these up and coming doctors, are they asking questions about vaccines, or, you know, are they fairly already up to date on this and say, yeah, the science is there? Right.
Well, so as you might imagine, this is something that we're taught in medical training all the time, partly because it's not a static thing. The entire field of vaccinology is a moving target because there are new vaccines that are available every once in a while. The chickenpox vaccine came out in '95. Since then, there have been other ones, rotavirus and others, HPV, as you mentioned.
Right.
And the part of the misinformation that's out there is that, you know, there's not enough research done on these. We don't know the long-term outcomes. When in fact we do have extremely good long-term outcome data for the vast majority of vaccines. Even the newer ones have had at least a decade and a half of good data coming out from, you know, the public and the information that's coming back from them.
Right.
And there's official surveillance in place to make sure that these things are safe. And so, you know, when we talk to medical students and medical trainees about this kind of thing, it's always an evolving field. And because the technology of vaccines is changing as well, I mean, hopefully soon we'll have a vaccine against HIV, for example. There's an excellent vaccine that was just developed with Canadian help against the Ebola vaccine. It's 98% effective.
Wow.
So these are things that are ongoing. On one hand, I understand that, you know, parents are very concerned about their children's health and what they want to put into their kids' bodies, and I totally understand that. The thing that they have to get over is that the good information isn't going to be found on social media. It's going to be found on reliable sites, whether it's universities or other reliable organizations that actually do the research. And so I think part of what we need to do, starting at a very young age with kids, is to teach them how to understand information, how to critically think through, you know, what does this actually mean and where can I get good sources of data, and translate that into my life. And so that process, I think, is an ongoing struggle.